Hi everybody and welcome to Heel Heat. My name is George Coles, and on this episode we're reviewing WWE Elimination Chamber. And yes, we're going to talk about the gigantic elephant at the end, but before we get there, if you haven't seen any of my videos previously, I grade everything on a 1 to 5 scale, 1 being the worst, 5 being the best. With that being said, let's jump right into it. We're starting off the show with the Women's Elimination Chamber. We have Alexa Bliss, Roxanne Perez, Bayley, Bianca Belair, Liv Morgan, and Naomi. Now, I'm not going to go through every elimination because this would be a 1-hour video if I did so. I'm just going to talk about this basically in highlights, and I'm going to do the same for the men. I thoroughly enjoyed this match. From the opening part where they've isolated Liv and Naomi, and here comes a returning Jade Cargill, with the story being that Liv and Raquel Rodriguez were the ones that attacked Jade. It kind of played into that, and you could see Liv Morgan is mouthing, "I didn't do it. I know you think I did it. I didn't do it. I didn't do it." And you could kind of see Naomi slinking to the back and kind of hiding off in the corner, the same corner that her tag team partner Bianca Belair is in the pod. And Jade comes in, you see Liv mouth one more time, and I watched this back because I thought I caught it the first time and I wanted to make sure what I seen. Liv says very directly to Jade, "I didn't do it," and you could see Jade say, "I know," before she goes and attack Naomi. And the beauty of this is not just how brutal the attack is and making Jade look like an absolute monster coming out here and destroying Naomi like that. It's Bianca. Bianca being trapped in the pod while her two friends are basically trying to kill each other, more specifically Jade Cargill. The confusion that has to be going through her brain and the way she pulled that off, her expressions, her reactions, her just seeming to break down mentally while in the pod, made for such a visual storytelling arc here. I love the fact that the recent conversation has been that there hasn't been much storyline-wise for women, but now we're starting to see some of that, especially in this match. We have that now where you could go, okay, where does this go from here? Obviously, Naomi is the one that attacked Jade Cargill. Is this going to lead to Bianca teaming with Naomi, or is she going to take Jade's side? Was Bianca involved? These are the kind of things that us fans wanted to see. We just don't want to see contender A wants to fight contender B. We want to see these personal conflicts and reasons why people hate each other. This was beautiful. That was a beautiful piece of story. That's probably the highlight of the match for me. Obviously, Bianca Belair picks up the win here, which I was kind of surprised with, but pleasant, because what that kind of tells me is that Bianca's going to peel off from that storyline. That's going to be a storyline of just Naomi and Jade Cargill, I'm assuming leading up to a match at WrestleMania, which also gives me hope that there's going to be more than just 1 or 2 women's matches on the 2 nights of WrestleMania, that we are going to see some grudge matches, that we're not going to be relegated to seeing women just being in a women's battle royal. I love this. Bianca was a winner. For me, the MVP of the match was Liv Morgan. I think she was the most impressive woman out here. Roxanne Perez as well. When Roxanne entered the match, the intensity and the pace picked up a whole lot. But Liv really was the catalyst of everything that happened in it. She was involved in everything. She had some of the best spots in the match. I think she's the MVP of the match. And I really think that her character, especially since coming back and aligning with Dominic Mysterio, she has grown so much. And I don't know if it's just a product of being part of the Triple H regime, but it seems like the Liv Morgan we have now is the best version of Liv Morgan we've ever had. I like this match, and I'm going to spoil it right now. This is my favorite match of the night. I'm giving this one a 5. I thought it was excellent. This is perfect storytelling, maybe the best Elimination Chamber match out of all Elimination Chamber matches I've ever seen. I don't know any that told a better storyline in the chamber itself than this did. Now, going from that, we're going into a women's tag team match. We have Nia Jax and Candice LeRae, and they're going up against Tiffany Stratton and Trish Stratus. Can't say that 3 times fast. Kind of cool that Tiffany and Trish had the Maple Leafs gear, being that they're in Toronto. Obviously, Trish is from Toronto. And it's kind of neat seeing Trish being like the prototype of what Tiffany is. Tiffany, she's the new generation version of Trish, the beautiful woman that you don't expect to be a great wrestler just because we're so entwined to think that beautiful women in wrestling just get by on their looks. And not saying that Candice or Nia Jax are not beautiful, they're extremely beautiful. What I mean by that is there's a different thing to them. Like Tiffany Stratton and Trish Stratus are more your conventional Marilyn Monroe style, whereas Nia Jax, obviously not fitting that mold, but she is very beautiful. She definitely is. Candice LeRae, same thing, more of a tomboy-esque kind of beauty. And if you think about it, like the women in the first match, every one of them women are extremely gorgeous in their own different way. And I like that. I like that the women's division has got to the point where we have different flavors. It's not just the divas. It's just not, one specific look because the guy making the decisions likes to pick swimsuit models and make them into wrestlers. I digress. I thought this was a really good match, a really fun match. The one thing I will say about this, and this is not a knock on this here, I feel like this felt more like a SmackDown main event match than it did as a pay-per-view match. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I don't think that the stakes were there necessarily. I don't think that there was much done with Trish Stratus leading into this. Either way, this was a highlight for Tiffany and Trish. I enjoyed this. I'm giving this one a 4. And obviously Tiffany and Trish pick up the win here. That leads us into our next match, which is an unsanctioned match between Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. I love the fact that they did the whole package with their backstory and how they're friends. They turn on each other, they're friends again, they turn on each other again. This whole thing that's been going on for basically 20 years now. And I even like on commentary that Michael Cole referenced Kevin Steen versus El Generico, even though kayfabe, they're different people than the two people we see here. Yes, I know. I like to keep kayfabe with the Generico character being passed away and not the same person. So allow me that. And I like that Michael Cole kept that part the same as I do. He kind of talked about it and mentioned this is on a different wavelength. And I like this match. And you're going to hear me talk about this match and think that I didn't. Because I am going to say some things here that kind of contradict that statement. I think this match, in a good way and in a bad way, was a little bit too much of a throwback. And what I mean by that is the whole brawling through the crowd, the weapons, all this stuff that's been done a million times in a million matches. They've done this to each other back in Ring of Honor. I do think there are better Ring of Honor matches between these two gentlemen than this match. Their ladder war was fantastic. And to me, there were a lot of things that kind of should have hit better. Because these guys, don't get me wrong, they put their careers and lives on their line for some of these spots here. And for this match, and how it falls in the greater scheme of things on this card, I feel like a lot of it's unnecessary. And again, I do enjoy the match. Preference that. I'm just saying, I don't know that you ramp it up to this level of violence and this level of just craziness. It kind of felt like a throwback to the Attitude Era. A throwback to the ECW era. And we've become desensitized as wrestling fans. There was a lot of stuff in here that was really, really dangerous. Suplexes into chairs and blue thunder bombs through chairs. That chair with the barbed wire, that had to be gimmicked barbed wire because Kevin Owens went into that several times and he was not bleeding from anyone. Which I know why they kept the blood away. We'll talk about that later. But that was another thing. For as brutal as this was, they should have been bleeding buckets. The ultimate story here is how sadistic Kevin Owens could be, especially against the guy who he considers his best friend, which ultimately he has some throwbacks to previous meetings, the power bombs into the apron, all that stuff. Kevin Owens does pick up the win here. For the match, I'm going to give the match a 3. I thought it was good. There's nothing special here. And again, I do like the match. But when I think about this in let's say, in the landscape of 2025, this is no different than something I could see from Jon Moxley and Adam Copeland on a weekly basis. And like I said, the risk versus the reward for me, where this falls and what this means, especially even after this match itself. If what happened at the end of the show didn't happen and what happened after this match was the only really huge surprise, this match would lose its importance just because of that. After the match, we see Randy Orton come out. Obviously, he was injured by Kevin Owens. Seems like they're going to be setting up a WrestleMania match between the two. He breaks up what was going to be a package pile driver into the concrete, where Kevin Owens explodes the concrete on the outside. They start going at it. Orton obviously gets the upper hand, mostly because Kevin just went through a 25-minute match that was very grueling for him. He hits his RKO. He threatens with a chair, but then decides he's going to go for the punt. A move that we haven't seen in a long, long time. And before he could get to the punt, all of the people from backstage, the agents, the security, rushed the ring and stopped. I like that part about that they didn't give us it right away. They teased it. I'm going to bet that there's going to be some kind of stipulation for the WrestleMania match where both the package pile driver and the punt are legal for the match. Two quote-unquote banned moves. And I'm going to be willing to bet that whoever hits the banned move is going to be the one that wins the match. Whether that be the stipulation or that's what helps them to win it. The match itself, I enjoyed. The after, I liked even better. I'm giving the match a 3. I thought it was good. Like I said, I did have some issues with it and its placing, and how pretty much 2 months from now, we're not going to remember this match barely at all, other than maybe the Orton return. And that's where my biggest gripe with this is. For as dangerous as this was, it should be something more memorable. And last but not least, we get to the main event of the show, the men's Elimination Chamber match. We have CM Punk, Drew McIntyre, Seth Rollins, Logan Paul, Damian Priest, and John Cena. There is a lot to like in this match. The continuing story of Seth Rollins being obsessed with CM Punk, Drew McIntyre's hubris getting the best of him again. Obviously, they're setting up a match between McIntyre and Priest. That looks to be the obvious thing here coming out of this, because one of the things we see is Drew kind of trying to pin John Cena but getting rolled up by Priest, and then Claymore and Priest after it, causing Priest to get eliminated. There's a lot of little story bites here. The kind of everyone versus Logan Paul story going through it, the Cena and Punk handshake and hug, and kind of respect between two old warriors before going at it. There's a lot here that really helped move a lot of storylines going forward. Obviously, if you're going to ask me what they're building from here, I'm thinking they're building a Punk and Seth Rollins match at WrestleMania, maybe a 3-way with Roman, Drew and Priest at WrestleMania. Who knows what they're going to do with Logan Paul at WrestleMania, but I'm going to bet it's going to be something interesting. And then we know what happens, because obviously John Cena wins the match. He's going to go on to face Cody Rhodes. There are some things, and I'm going to talk about it here because it ties into what happens after. There's a couple little subtle things in the match that give us hints of what's coming later. When Cena goes for the second handshake with Punk and Punk kind of takes advantage of it, is that the moment that clicks in Cena's head that I need to be more opportunistic? Or is it later on when Punk eliminates Rollins and then Rollins hits a stomp on Punk, crashing his head into the outside of the chamber, and Cena takes advantage of it, puts him in the STFU, which is probably one of the better looking STFUs or STFs he's ever done. Did he learn that from earlier when Punk took advantage of him, or was this always part of the plan? The thing that stood out about that ending to me is old John Cena would have stood and looked at Seth Rollins and cursed at him and kind of done the whole, "What are you doing? Why did you do that?" Blah, blah, blah. You know, the whole thing, getting upset, only for CM Punk to take advantage of that. However, this John Cena has become opportunistic. Did he learn it in the chamber? Or was this the plan all along? I like that little piece of it there. I did enjoy this match. I'm going to give this match a 4. I don't think it was as good as the women's match. It was very good, and there's a lot of stories coming out of it, which is what I like to see in a match like this, especially when you know a pay-per-view like Elimination Chamber is basically there to set up your feuds for WrestleMania. Obviously, between the two chamber matches, we have a ton of feuds going forward. So, yeah, it makes perfect sense. I'm giving that a 4. Now, I'm going to keep this part separate. And normally, these type of segments I don't rate. I am going to make the exception here and give this one a. After the match, we have Cody Rhodes come out. Him and Cena shake hands. Then we hear the music. The final boss, The Rock, is coming out. First out comes Travis Scott, which kind of was interesting because I don't know that Travis Scott, and don't get me wrong, he's a huge, huge artist. He's a huge musician. But I don't think he's well known enough to stand on his own like that. I mean, he's not, let's say, Kendrick Lamar, who just played the Super Bowl and everybody would know who he is. Or even Drake, who I seen there were pictures of him in the crowd here and they didn't acknowledge, who a lot of, crossover fans know, or go to the pop world, someone like Sabrina Carpenter or obviously Taylor Swift. But I know who Travis Scott is, and I knew him right away. But I think there was a little bit of who is that type moment when we expected to rock. It was kind of interesting that Travis Scott was part of this whole thing. It kind of feels like there's something there. There's got to be something there, in my opinion. This was the culmination of, is Cody Rhodes going to sell out? Is he going to give The Rock his soul? And what we see here, they go there a little back and forth. Cody ultimately tells him, and I'm paraphrasing this because I don't remember the exact terminology, I can't give you my soul because I've already gave it to the fans. I've already gave it to the wrestling business. I kind of thought he was going to say Brandy there, to be honest with you, which makes sense too because that's his wife. You give your soul to your wife. Then we see he turned to The Rock and he tells him, Rock, go fuck yourself. And we see Cena seemingly excited and doing his whole over-exaggerated thing in the background. The whole time The Rock and Cody were speaking, Cena and Travis Scott were in the background. And then kind of a little bit of a long moment here where nothing happens, but Cody turns to Cena, they shake hands, they embrace. As they're embracing, we see John Cena looking at The Rock. His smile off his face turns into a frown, and then The Rock gives him the throat slash. We see the one thing that no one expected. I'm sure some people probably predicted this, but the one thing that wrestling fans have been clamoring for at least 15 years, if not more, something that was totally unexpected, a total shock to the system, John Cena turns. He kicks Cody Rhodes in his man parts. There is a brutal, violent attack between Cena hitting Cody with his Rolex, which is very symbolic. That's the Rolex that Triple H and Nick Khan gave to Cody because it matches the Rolex that his father had. The Rock hitting him with the belt that says Cody's soul and the date that Dusty Rhodes passed on it. Even Travis Scott coming in and hitting a very brutal looking smack to Cody's face. I hope afterwards he cleared that up with Cody because I know he's not from the wrestling world, but man, that was a vicious shot. This is why the Kevin Owens and Sami match didn't have the blood that I think it needed to elevate that match. But I kind of understand here because you kind of want to make this part special. And again, this is another criticism of the earlier match. When we look back at this card and we talk about what happened here, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 30 years from now, like Bash at the Beach. The thing we're going to talk about is John Cena turning. Think of Bash at the Beach 96. Do you remember anything other than the Hogan turn to the NWO from that? Not really. I mean, unless you're a super fan and that's your favorite show. I couldn't even tell you any other matches on that card without looking at the card. And I've watched it at least 5 or 6 times from beginning to the end. This is the moment. This is Andre telling Hogan he wants a shot. This is Larry Zbyszko turning on Bruno. This is Hogan joining the NWO. This is the major game-changing moment. And I don't mean to be hyperbolic here. I don't mean to overstate this. This is almost beat for beat the Hogan heel turn. The only difference here is I think that Cena still has more cachet and more love than Hulk Hogan did in 96. 96 Hulk Hogan, the fans had already kind of turned. Cena's gone through having the fans turn on him and then now becoming a beloved older statesman. And this was just a masterclass. This was Triple H's defining moment as a booker as we stand right now. And I say that knowing everything that happened with the Bloodline, and I think the Bloodline is one of the best storylines that's ever happened in wrestling. The final boss character of The Rock, and him being an agent of chaos, and them playing that up here. What is he going to do? How is he going to change WrestleMania? It is so perfect because they played into everything that people feared with The Rock. Now we go back and we look at things like Bad Blood where he holds up the 3 fingers. Well, you notice he's holding up the 3, but on the other side, it's the John Cena symbol. We notice little things like that are kind of maybe have always been there. Maybe this is something that's been brewing for months. And what can The Rock offer Cena that he already has? That was a big thing for Cody. What was he going to offer Cody? Well, Cena, arguably, is almost as big a movie star as The Rock. He's been in major movies. He's been in a big TV show. He's got more world championships than The Rock. His cachet in the wrestling world is similar to The Rock, at least accolade-wise, maybe not historically. But what's the one thing The Rock can offer Cena that Cena hasn't had on his own? And that's number 17. Remember, even Cena himself has reminded us that he's been struggling these last few years picking up a win. Being a heel and being in alignment with the final boss, there you go. Maybe he has an easier route. I love this. I hope at some point we do get to see Travis Scott in a match, which I think is going to happen. I would say probably maybe Backlash. We get a 6-man with The Rock, Cena, and Travis Scott versus Cody and whoever else is going to help Cody. I think that would be cool. I'd love to see it. I think it'd be a cool spot. I mean, I like Travis Scott's music, so maybe that's just me. He might be terrible. He might be Logan Paul. I think this was fantastic. I think this is one of the historic moments that we're going to look back on. Hopefully, if they don't ruin it going forward. They may ruin this going forward. But as of right now, this feels like one of those moments that's going to be in the highlight package. This feels like Mankind going off a Hell in a Cell. This feels like the NWO Hogan turn. This feels like the Montreal Screwjob. This feels as big as any moment has in wrestling in a very, very long time. I thought this was fantastic. I mentioned earlier that I grade everything on a 1 to 5 scale, but much like Dave Meltzer, I can break my own scale. I'm going to give this a 17. And the reason for the 17 is because I think this leads to John Cena breaking Ric Flair's record of 17. The real record's in the 20s. But for kayfabe reasons, we'll say 17 breaks his record. I thought this was fantastic. I thought this was the best ending to a pay-per-view, at least since WrestleMania of last year, and probably even longer than that. This is going to go down in everybody's memory that watches wrestling right now as one of the great moments of all time. In my opinion. But let me know what you think. Did you think it was as important as I do? Did you hate it? Did you love it? Did you love the show overall? What was your favorite match? Mine obviously was the Women's Elimination Chamber match. All the surprises, Jade Cargill, Randy Orton, the Cena heel turn. Great show. I'm giving the show overall a 5. I thought it was fantastic from beginning to end. Again, let me know what you think down here. While you're there, smash that like button, share the video, subscribe if you haven't. If you see where it says join, that's how you become a channel member. With all that being said, my name is George Coles. You've been watching Heel.